I have learned that anytime I strong arm a person or use some of the more manipulative sales tactics that don't feel that manipulative, but very much are, whether it's in my coaching programs or in my physical gym, like it's just never a good fit. Never a good fit. And so I've really learned to, especially in my space, to allow people to make empowered decisions.
Welcome to Girls Make Bank, the podcast show for women who want to learn the art of selling for business and for life. I'm Jac White, seasoned sales professional, entrepreneur, and owner of Honeybees Group. Come back each week to hear inspiring stories from some of our favorite business owners. Learn how to take the ache out of selling and make bank. We're all in this together, so let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Girls Make Bank. I am your host, Jac White. We are all about teaching the girlies how to sell and make money around here. And I'm very excited to bring on today's guest because I was a guest on her podcast a few months ago, which was the first time we met. We immediately made a connection. I have since joined some of her community calls, and she's just someone that I really, really respect and admire and love what she's doing. Welcome to Girls Make Bank, Laura Sinclair.
Thank you so much for having me and for that generous intro. That is so kind. Thank you. I'm so glad that our paths have crossed.
Me too. Well, before we started recording, we were talking a little bit, and I was telling Laura how much I admire the community that she has built. And she was saying she doesn't really know how it happens. And we sort of agreed that the magic is actually her, and that, you know, when you are putting out good energy and good vibes into the world, good things come to you. And that's something that I talk a lot about in terms of sales, when you're really coming to sales from a place of service and not a what's in it for me. Good things happen and you sell more. And I think that's the same in business. And Laura, you come from a place of like, how can I help and how can I serve? And that's why I think you have built this great business that we're going to start to dive into.
Totally. It is a big piece, but it's an and, right? It's like, yes, I want to serve, and I also want to make sales, and I want to make bank and do all those things. So I definitely try to lead with that, lead with heart first. But at the end of the day, like I'm a businesswoman.
That's
so,
right.
You know, it worked out great, but I want to make bank too.
So tell us a little bit about you and your company, This Mother Means Business, and what you do. And then I want to dive into like the early part of your career and the businesses that you had previous. But tell us who you are and what you do now.
Yeah, so I'm Laura Sinclair. I'm Canadian. So if you're wondering what the accent is, I don't hear it, but a lot of my American friends do. And I'm based in Toronto. I started my business. This Mother Means Business kind of happened by accident. So I'm a strategic business mentor. I mentor a lot of early stage founders with visibility, being seen, some of the customer service, some of the sales stuff, not quite to the extent that you do, Jac, but really with just getting their businesses past that first 6-figure mark and with all the other pieces that come with it. And I never really intended to find myself in the mom space, but I'm a mom. I have a 4-year-old, and 95% of my clients were coming to me because I was a mom and they had kids and they're trying to navigate this motherhood and entrepreneurship piece. And so 2 years ago, I started my podcast, called it This Mother Means Business. Didn't really think too much of it. It was either going to be that or the ambitious mom or something. And then I went to my Instagram stories and said, which name should I go with? This Mother Means Business or the ambitious mom? And 90% of people actually voted for the ambitious mom. My creatives, so like my copywriters, people that are in branding, all voted for This Mother Means Business. And I was like, well, This Mother Means Business it is then, because if the creatives are leaning towards it, that's what we're going to do. And then it became a retreat. So I've hosted retreats for the last 2 years. Then it became a community. And then I'm hosting my first event in April of this year. And it sort of leaned into this realization that, I'm building This Mother Means Business as a platform to support entrepreneurial mothers around the world in the intersection that is motherhood and entrepreneurship, because we can talk about all the tactics and all the strategies in the world, but if we don't layer on the human element of being a mom and running a business, it's really hard and a lot of the time not helpful, right? If you get advice, you're like, well, I can't possibly do that. So really what I try to do is help women navigate that intersection from both a strategy perspective and then the human element as well.
Yeah. And I think so many moms over the last 5 years since COVID have become what I call accidental entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They never intended to start their own businesses, but circumstantial, either, their kids were home from school, they lost their corporate job and they can't replace it, whatever it is, or just life is calling us to start our own businesses. And there is a different element of juggling and making it all work when you are also raising a family, because you can have the most supportive partner. My husband is incredibly amazing and supportive, but most of the burden still falls on me of the mental load, right? That's a real thing. And so to be able to acknowledge that and to find support and know that, entrepreneurship in and of itself is lonely. Motherhood in and of itself can be really lonely. So finding people who understand and can support you and can, kind of help you navigate both in a better way, I think is fantastic.
Yeah. I saw an analogy actually on LinkedIn. Somebody was writing about motherhood and entrepreneurship, and we often talk about like juggling balls or
Yeah.
juggling. Things. And she's like, no, I'm juggling chainsaws. Like people,
Oh, yeah.
things that are like real, there are real implications to these
Yeah.
things that I'm juggling. It's not just like, oops, that ball bounced.
Dropped a ball.
This is like the development of humans, right?
Yeah.
Their emotional needs, like there are consequences to that. There are
Yeah.
consequences to not being able to provide for your family. Like these are chainsaws that we're juggling. They're not just balls. And I was like, oh, I love that analogy.
I
So
love that. And I didn't see that, but I totally agree with it. Talk to us a little bit about little baby Laura and the start of your career. And you've owned businesses before this Mother Means business. So take us back to how you started your career and how you first got into sales and built your first business with, I think, your husband, correct?
yeah, so little baby Laura actually had a corporate career. So I
Ooh,
started my career in public relations. And so I learned the act of the pitch. I wasn't
yeah.
selling content, or I wasn't selling like anything that was there. There was no monetary
Yeah.
exchange, but I was telling stories. And so I learned very quickly. This was the days where I had to like get on the phone and call the reporter and hope he didn't yell at me about this, this. So it was a pretty volatile sales environment. So that's where I started. My career was in PR and then moved over into marketing and have more of a digital marketing background. And I left the corporate world in 2015 and ended up buying a brick and mortar gym, micro gym.
Cool.
And I say I bought it with my husband, but we ran it together. But really, I bought it.
Yeah.
My business. He helped me because he'd already run another micro gym with his brother. So he had a
Mm,
little bit grown into it. But at the end of the day, he was there doing the coaching and the smiling and the, the running of what was happening in the facility, at least at first. And I was doing all of the back end. And then we ran that gym for about 5 years. And I would say probably the last 3 years, he really wasn't involved in it
yeah.
at all. He's a firefighter, so he has a full-time thing. So the gym was really my full-time thing.
Yeah. And talk to us about you mentioned PR, which I think is an interesting analogy. And I do a sales mindset workshop and I talk about how we all have something to sell. And
Yeah.
whether you actually are in charge of running revenue or you work within a corporate company or whatever it is, we are constantly selling something, whether it's just your ideas, whatever it is. And so I love that you kind of framed that as I was in PR, so I was doing pitches all the time. I was selling something. Money wasn't the currency,
Yeah.
but you're selling something. You're trying to get your product out into the world via PR.
Yeah, I really believe that anytime we show up for our business, we're selling, whether
Yeah.
we're like in an actual sales environment or not. But PR, I'm glad I don't work in that industry right now
Yeah.
anymore. But it was a really, really good foundation for me to understand a lot of things like optics, positioning, messaging, story follow up, all of that stuff
Mhm.
transition really nicely to sales. But I will say that transition from selling a story, selling an idea to then selling something where there was like a cash implication involved was clunky for me.
Yeah.
I can still remember, we worked with a bunch of different coaches and I'm happy to sort of share some of that, but I still remember the first time I sold a high ticket package for my
At your
gym.
gym. Yeah.
Which I think was like $1,616. Like it really wasn't like this is things that I now do on a regular basis all the time, don't even sniff at. But I remember saying this thing, like I could taste it in my mouth. This like that'll be $1,616. And I thought I was gonna vomit.
Yeah.
And like I can literally like put myself back there so easily. And he was just like, cool. Like it was no thing, it was no big deal. And it's just crazy to think back to that time because now I do 4-figure transactions, 5-figure transactions all the time in my business and don't really blink. But I think it's like a really interesting transition. And we talk about with anything in business, it's reps, right? It's practice. Sales is something that even with the PR background, it's still something that I really, really had to practice and take reps at. And I think owning a gym was a really, really good training ground for me because I saw so many different things.
Yeah. And probably so many different styles,
Yeah.
right? You said two things that were really important. And I want to talk about like the selling of physical memberships and sort of the gym piece. But, in terms of the psychological shift, I grew up in sales and business development and partnerships. So I've sort of been selling my whole career. But I can tell you the mental shift that happened when I worked within a company to moving outside and launching my own business was incredibly different. And you sort of go through all of that imposter syndrome and all of that sort of fear and doubt and like all of that stuff that you have. And it is different, I think, depending on the type of selling that you're doing and what the value exchange is and all of that, like the emotional stuff that can come up. We've talked a little bit before we started recording about like the sales tactics for gyms and selling memberships and all of that. And you've hired a bunch of coaches during that time to help you. Talk to me about like what the traditional sort of best practices are that people told you and then why that did or didn't work for you.
So traditionally in the gym environment, people teach like this very hard sell. And I'm a good student, like I went to the trainings, I sat there and I was, taught you about handling objections, calling your leads back within like the first 25 minutes so that you don't lose them, like this really hard chase. And so, I entered a mentorship program that was great. It was just run by a bunch of men and they're sort of like, you got to lead in, you better turn that around right away and whatever you need to do. And I'll be honest, I learned skills that if I wanted to close a sale, I could.
Yeah.
And not in a way that feels good. Let's be clear. And so I used some of those tactics at the beginning. And the reality was in the business that I run, we talked about this a little bit actually at the beginning when we were talking about my community. So we owned a CrossFit gym. CrossFit gyms are community-based spaces. So people come in, it's not just a place you work out. It's a place where you're like part of the community. And they're also relatively expensive in the grand scheme of gym memberships. We're not talking about a $30 a month membership. We're talking about a $200 a month membership that I, as a business owner, actually want people to use. Yeah. If you're going to spend $200 a month, I want you to come into my gym. And so what was happening was some of these tactics there were some that I never used, but some that were a little bit just like a little more forceful. So, when people would come in, you do the thing, you let them talk, you shape for them, what is life going to continue to look like if you don't join the gym? You say, well, what are you going to do instead? And going to happen if you continue on this path and really starting to like poke at some of those pains.
Yeah. It's emotional manipulation, essentially.
Emotional manipulation. Yep. And then, when it gets to the point of the objections, you're sort of trained to then like address those head on.
Mm-hmm.
And, if it's I just need to talk to my partner, which we know is usually not actually the case. I was taught to say to them, and I laughed because I never did this, but sure, let me step out of the room and I'll let you call them right now. Let me do that for you.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's the sort of pressure that was supposed to be created, which never felt good for me, Jac. Like I was just like, I literally can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm a person who likes to think about things. Sometimes I come into a sales situation and I know, I'm doing this. But there are other times I'm like, I'm just going to see how this feels. And so I really learned to kind of honor people where they're at in their journey. But I will say the people that I don't want to say strong arm, but stronger into buying, using some of those tactics ended up being my worst members. They were my worst members. They didn't come very often, or if they did come, they weren't really checked. They were kind of checked out, and then that affected other people's experience. They didn't stay for long. And it was just like, it wasn't good for anybody.
Yeah.
So I've learned to drop those. There are still sales tactics that I use, the ones that feel good for me, that are aligned for me. But I have learned that anytime I strong arm a person or use some of the more manipulative sales tactics that don't feel that manipulative, but very much are, whether it's in my coaching programs or in my physical gym, like it's just never a good fit. Never a good fit. And so I've really learned to, especially in my space, to allow people to make empowered decisions.
Yeah.
They're always the best clients anyway.
And so and I completely agree. And I think it's a part of why sales gets such a bad rap, is because we all have those experiences of when we are being hard pitched and hard sold on something that maybe we don't want or need, or we need more time. It's not even like necessarily a no, but like it's let me think about it.
Yeah.
And I think those experiences stick with us, and it's what makes people, especially women, feel like, ooh, I don't want to sell. Like, I don't want to be the one that gives people that experience. And so talk to me about how you have transitioned your sales style from that very sort of, I would say, masculine, traditional, I call it the boiler room era of selling, to now where you are running a thriving business and you are seeing sales on a regular clip. What transitioned for you in your style?
So I think the first piece is like really just coming from this recognition that selling is helping. Like the work that I'm doing is helping, and you either want the help or you don't. And so coming into sales environments, like really anchor in myself that if this person wants this thing, I don't have to convince them of anything.
Yeah.
If they're coming on the call with me, they're walking into my gym, they've already, wherever the space is, right? They have convinced themselves that this is probably something that they need. And so whenever I come at something with like, okay, I'm gonna get this person to buy, I've immediately lost. I'm immediately in the wrong headspace. And so I try to come at it as, okay, I'm really looking forward to seeing how I can help. So having a conversation that is rooted in help. And yes, sure, there's going to be a monetary exchange at some point in the conversation. But for me, it's just been rooted in help and being really curious. I love getting on sales calls because it gives me an opportunity to just get curious about where a person's at and ask them questions that are rooted in curiosity, not rooted in how am I going to close this person? Because usually that's going to do the same thing, right? Like it's doing the same thing. Asking curious questions is going to elicit the same answers as the forceful questions. You're just doing it in a way that's so much more supportive and relationship building. And then usually for me, I actually ask their permission to sell to them. So I'll say, that's just something that I've done that has helped break the ice. That's feel really good. It's like saying like, hey, Jac, I really enjoyed our conversation. I think you'd be a great fit for whatever. I think your business would align for whatever. Are you open to me telling you a little bit about it?
I love that.
And that's worked really well for me to just be like, yeah, cool. And now we're in this, like, we know we're
dialogue,
the sales section of the dialogue where we can have a really good chat. And, then yes, we'll talk about money. And usually for me, then there's the close, right? Which is where, in my experience, a lot of people lose it, right? It's like, okay, well, you just let me know. And so for me, I learned to transition again, like some phrases that are really helpful for me to close in a way that's not like, so are you in?
Are you in or are you out?
Well, in or you're out. And usually the question I just ask people is, so when do you think you might like to get started?
Yeah.
And that gives them the space to say, hey, you know what? Let me take this away. And that gives me good information, right? That gives me information. Let me take this away. I'm going to have a conversation. Cool. Yes, I respect that. Go do it. Or it lets them say, you know what? I think maybe I definitely want to do it. Maybe in about a month. And I'll say, perfect. I'll follow up with you in a couple of weeks and we can get that on. Or they'll say, maybe in a couple of weeks. And I'll say, perfect. Let's get something on the calendar.
Yeah.
And so it's just like a different close than are you in, are you not in? And so for me, it's taken some practice to get comfortable with some of these lines. And I share this. I feel like I'm like really opening the kimono. And
Yeah, I love it. And
they're
this
gonna
is
know.
a master class in how to do a sales call, by the way. I'm going to like recap this because everybody should listen to this episode more than once because what Laura is saying is like spot on.
Thank you. Yeah, but it's taking practice, Jack. And I'm not a person that. What's interesting is I was trained not this way.
Yeah.
And it's just over time for me to learn this way. Okay, this is actually what feels good for me because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, this is still a transactional conversation. I'm still running a business. Yes, I want to help. And
Right. I also need to make money.
And I have to pay my bills.
Yeah.
I would love to volunteer. I can't do that. That's not how the world works. And so, yeah, for me, that's just how I've run my sales calls for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And I have a very high close rate because I ask those questions. I set it up in that way, but it's leading with help. And truly, if I don't think I can help a person, I will tell them.
Yep.
I will tell them.
Okay. You just dropped so much gold on everybody. So let me like try to summarize because you hit on so many of the points that I think are really important that are nuanced but make all the difference in the world. And number one, how you feel doing sales calls. And number two, the response you get from your sales calls. So, what you didn't explicitly say, but I read between the lines, is that you prepare for your sales calls. Maybe not like totally for each individual one because you've been doing this for a long time, but I heard you say, I have questions that I ask. I have a framework that I sort of conduct the call within. And I think people get really nervous about getting on sales calls because they don't have a structure to what it is they're trying to do. They're really shooting at the hip. And I think when you're shooting at the hip, it makes you more nervous and there's no sort of structure or flow. So I love that you kind of have developed a structure that works for you. I love that you show up from a place of wanting to help and being curious because I think you get the best sales results when you don't make it about yourself and what you have, but you're making it about the other person and like, how can you help them? And when you are genuinely, and that's what all of us are really trying to do. That's what we want is to help our clients succeed, to like get our products out into the world. And so when you take that pressure of selling something away and you just approach it with curiosity, you know, it one creates more genuine connection. And then two, like the other person senses that and you're learning about like whether you can help them or not. I love that you ask permission to start the sell. That's the first time I've sort of heard somebody say it like that. And I really do love that because it lets everyone know that you're transitioning to this next part of the call. So people don't feel like, you know, you've sprung something on them that they're not ready for. What else did you say that was so juicy in there? You prep genuine questions. Oh, the big one is when you can't help people, letting them know.
Yeah.
So many of us, and I've done this too, we get this like desperation mentality where especially when you're building your business, is you feel like you can't say no. You have to work with everyone, even though inside our gut is telling us, I don't think this is a right fit for them or for me, but we need the money. We don't want to say no. And we think like we have to accept everyone. And I think we all, like, once you do that a few times, you realize this is not like the place I want to be. It's okay to say no. And I think you gain credibility when you say no. This isn't like it for me, but I have this other resource or I know this other person that would like be a better fit.
Yeah. And I've done that too. Let's just be clear.
Mhm.
I've done it too. And in different stages of my career, definitely how I'm, been feeling. I did it a year ago. I let in 2 people into my mastermind that I was in a place where I was just one of them. I just really wanted to help, like just really wanted to help, but I knew that they weren't ready.
Yeah.
And so I strong armed a little too much. And then one I knew was a fit, but wanted all these extra things and it was going to be this on top. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know if I can say no to that, even though my gut was screaming at me. And of course, I ended up having to remove both of these people
Yeah.
because it actually wasn't a fit. And so, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm immune to that forever. I'm certainly in a season right now. And I'm not doing anything new where I'm very clear. I certainly said no to more people the last 2 rounds of my mastermind than I did say yes, because it's just bad for everybody,
Yeah.
especially when I'm running group programs. It's bad for the group. Even when I removed these 2 people that I'm referencing, women that were in the group were like, "Thank you. Thank you so much for doing that." And you're like, thank you for this reminder.
So that's so brave of you. Talk to me about without, getting into like personal stuff, talk to me about how you make the decision to essentially break up with a client or remove them from a group, because that's a brave thing to do after you've accepted, after you've taken money, after you've introduced them to a group. And it's sort of very aware to everyone that this isn't working.
Yeah.
What's the thought process? How do you get the nerve to do that? And what does that process look like?
It's wildly uncomfortable. Let's
Yeah.
just put that out of the way. It is a wildly uncomfortable decision to make. It's a wildly uncomfortable conversation to have. But one of the things that I have learned, and is I'm going to just go back to curiosity, right? Is, okay, let's get curious about this for a second. What is happening here? Like, what is it about this person, this situation? Okay, what is the real issue? And then I also love getting curious with myself. Like, why did you do this, Laura?
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of reflecting on removing these 2 people and over time and like understanding, okay, why did I do that? One of them, like I said, I just really wanted to help so badly that it just wasn't a fit, but I wanted to help her
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
And I can't do that, right? I can only help a person that wants to be helped. I can't help them just because I want to help them.
Yeah.
And so it really just comes from an honest conversation. That's like, how are you feeling about what's happening in the mastermind right now or happening in this container? And I think both of them knew that it wasn't really the space. And it's just like, in order to maintain the integrity of the group, I think that it's best that we go separate ways. I support you in your business. It's just, this isn't feeling in alignment anymore. And then, if there's money to be refunded, you refund it. If there's,
Yeah.
there's contractually, I have contracts that set up these conversations from the
Sure.
jump
Yeah.
that everybody is signed. But no, it's terrible and scary and the worst feeling. And I think I had anxiety about it for weeks, but it was for the betterment of the women that stayed. And I had to protect the integrity of the program because that's just part of it, right?
That's what
Like,
you're doing.
you've come into my communities,
Yeah.
right?
It's magic.
It is a really magical space. And I can't allow any her from it. When I think back to owning the gym, and people ask me, like, do you miss it? And I say some days, but most of the time, no. But the biggest thing that I would have done when I reflect on my time is remove people that were bad apples sooner. I let some of this stuff linger. I let people stay in my business, in my community that just shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
They were making other people's experience not good.
Yeah.
And I was too afraid.
Yeah.
And living in a place of fear to remove them, which I'm sure that I lost members because of these folks.
Yeah.
Right. If I had fewer of them, I probably would have retained, exponentially more people. And so if I were to ever run a gym business again, that business, if I would go back in time or fast forward and do it again, no, you would have to apply to become a member and you would have to be able to stay there. Even in our virtual community, we've had sort of laughs over the past because a lot of the women will they'll be in groups and they'll invite someone, oh, you should come to this call. And every now and then someone comes to the call that is like very clearly not
it.
Like, it's just not it.
Yeah.
And not because it's not because the calls are these like cliquey things. They're not at all. They're for warm and safe. But if you come in with the wrong energy, everyone feels it.
Yeah. And I think that's an important note. So 2 things. One, I think there's a certain amount of experience and confidence that you need to, I say work up to, because you can't, you need to do the thing before you get the experience. And I think confidence comes from doing things. I don't think you can just some people are born with tons of confidence. Most of us have to work up to it.
Yeah.
And as you get there, you realize, like you're saying, if I could go back and do this, well, you've taken that lesson and you've applied it to the business that you have today. So, you are doing that. And the second thing that I think is important is, there is a place for all of us. There's a community for all of us. There's a coach for all of us. There is a place for all of us. So just like you had these 2 people that were in your community that weren't a right fit, I would flip it around and say, if you have hired someone, or if you are in a community, or if you are the person that like is in somewhere and you're like, this isn't a fit for me, like you reserve the right to sort of say, I want to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, thank you. This isn't jiving. Like that's a two-way street. And I'm sure that the other people were feeling that also, and it's like when the energy is weird, the energy is weird. And there have been rooms where I've gone into and I was just like, these women are great, but this isn't my place. And, then there are other rooms where I've gone into and I'm like, oh, these are my people. Like now I'm home.
Like virtually and in real life.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
I've like gone to events and got excited about getting
Yeah.
to the event, and you get to the event, you walk into the room and you're there for 10 seconds.
Yep.
And you're, oh, I have found myself in the wrong place. And that's okay.
Yes.
Right? It's the right place for some people. And that's really what I try to focus on. Even in sales, I think it's like it's a really important piece of discernment that you need to do as a person that's selling. Is like, is this a person, especially in my work, right? Like I work with people really intimately, both in my mastermind and one-on-one. Are you a person that I want to talk to that much? Like that's a piece that also matters for me is like, yes, do I want to make the sale? Sure. But I'm an introvert and I'm a mom and my energy is not infinite. And so some of it is this a person that I want to spend the next, one-on-one with me is 12 months, the next year with, talking to on a regular basis? Because if it's not then got to be a yes for both of us.
Yeah.
And so that piece, there's a piece of sales too, which again, like you mentioned, some of it is experience and, the ability to say no.
Yeah.
And I respect all of that. But I think that my belief, and this might be a little on the woo side, but saying no to somebody that isn't a fit is only going to open the door for more people that are a fit. When I think about the women that are in this round of my mastermind, like I could not have dreamed of a better group. It's a sold out mastermind. I could not have dreamed of a better group. Like it makes me cry thinking about it. They are the way that they support each other is so beautiful. And the women that are in our community, incredible, at different levels of support, like the connections and the things that have come out of that is because I do police.
Yeah. I feel the same way with the sales circle, with the Honeybee sales circle. I've curated, each person. There's an application, there's an extensive application. We get on the phone, we Zoom, we talk because the same thing. I want that experience as a member. We're together for a year and we're doing really hard stuff in our business. And I want to make sure everybody's going to have a good experience because one person can ruin it for everyone and can ruin it for me, by the way, because this is like how I spend my time too.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about, because you are working with so many women entrepreneurs, what are some of the common struggles that you see people face as they're growing their businesses and raising little human beings?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many. There's one that's coming up for me actually right now. And sometimes when I have thoughts, I just decide I'm going to show them on the podcast. But I had a message from somebody the other day, and she said to me, I'm getting all these people on calls. I'm booking these calls, but like none of them are signing up for my program. Do they know that it's a sales call, or are they just connecting with you? Like, how have you framed this conversation with them? Do they know that you're going to sell them something? Or are you just like messaging people to say, hey, can we connect? I'd love to support you. Because those are two very different things. And it turned out she was, in fact, just messaging people and saying, hey, I'd love to talk to you about help you with, your goal setting sessions. And I'd love to support you. Are you open to getting on a call with me? And they were like, yeah, sure, let's connect. And then
sure, help me out. No problem.
She's like, well, why aren't they buying? It's like, well, you're not framing it. Like people don't know that they are getting on a call with you. So from a sales perspective, that's actually something I see more regularly than not. But in terms of the things that moms struggle with, women that are building business struggle with, honestly, Jac, 90% of the time, everything that they're struggling with comes down to boundaries. It's boundaries with themselves, boundaries with the promises, the things that they said that they were going to do. It's boundaries around their family, boundaries on their time, boundaries with their clients. Like,
oh my gosh.
90% of this can be solved truly by having better boundaries.
Why are you
And
putting my business out there like that right now, Laura?
absolutely, but nobody likes to hear it. They don't like to
It's
hear it.
so true.
They don't want to hear it. And it's so funny because I created this freebie months ago that was
Yeah.
like the boundaries freebie. And like 2 people downloaded it. They didn't want it. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I get this. But all of these symptoms that come up for moms, it's
Yeah.
feeling overwhelmed. They are lacking time. Their clients are wanting things at odd hours and they can't deliver in time.
Yes.
They are feeling like icky about sales, or they are, they're just feeling like all of these feelings, right? They can't do it. It's too much.
Yeah.
Boundaries, my friends.
Yes.
And it's this desire to
Oh my
be
gosh.
nice all the time instead of just like being
Yeah.
a person that says no.
Yeah.
And it's just, nobody likes to hear it when I say this,
Yeah.
but it's the truth. And like, we need to have boundaries, and we also need to keep the promises to ourselves. I think a lot of the times we think, oh, boundaries is like an other people thing.
Yep.
Something that other people need to manage.
Yeah.
So, well, this is a you thing. You are responsible for how you spend your time. You are responsible for how other people have access to you or do not have access to you. You need to set up a situation with your client that's overstepping your boundaries to know that that's not okay. It is on you to manage you. And so a lot of the women that work with me, that's actually where we start, even though we're coming in having conversations about, I want to make more money and I want to feel more ease in my life. And it's like, cool, let's pull all of this back right now, because 90% of the things that you don't like about your business right now are entirely fixable by you establishing some better boundaries. And we can talk about strategies and tactics and orders and revenue and sales and marketing. We can do all that. But at its core, if you don't have, and I don't know if I can swear on your show.
Yeah, go for it. We'll bleep it out.
Unwithable boundaries. As a mom entrepreneur, you are going to have a hell of a time.
You are like hitting the nail on the head right there, because boundaries is not even in my vocabulary. I have to tell you, I am just a yes.
Yeah.
I'm on the PTA. You need me to do something else? Yes. My son needs something? Yes. My husband needs a doctor's appointment? Yes. My client needs this? Yes. Like, it's just yes. And I think women, moms especially, are programmed to just pick up the slack, to just make it all run. And you are so right that bleeds. You said it before, you don't have an infinite amount of energy. None of us have an infinite amount of energy, but we expect ourselves to do an infinite amount of things with our limited amount of energy. And so I think that is, I'm going to go away now and start rethinking my own sort of life and where I say yes, and sort of the guidelines that I put and the guardrails that I put, because you're absolutely right. That's where the burnout happens, is by not having the boundaries and not protecting yourself.
Yeah. And the other piece, Jac, that I think is also really important when we start to look at these is actually looking at what our definition of being a good mom means.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of that, like, yes, and that people pleasing and raising your hand for everything comes from this like rooted belief of what it actually means to be a good mom. And I think that it becomes really difficult to then create boundaries. Like, well, am I being a bad mom if I'm not on the PTA? Let me tell you right now, I am not on the PTA. I will never be on the PTA. I will not volunteer. I do not come to the classroom. I don't have the capacity for that.
Yeah.
And some of that is not because my business is taking up every single ounce of my time. It's because I also need to exercise in order to not kill the people that live in my house.
Yeah.
I have to do things for me in order to show up the best version
for everybody else.
Well, and so I have to say no to those things.
Yeah.
There is not a single piece of me that thinks I'm a bad mom because I'm not on the PTA or I don't volunteer or I'm forgetting the costume that is needed or the snack. Like, that's not it for me. And a lot of that has come back to like doing some foundational work around what is good motherhood for me, not for what society says is it makes me a good mom. And listen, there is science that supports that our kids don't actually need us every single second. It's great to let other people love your children, or for them to see, you know what, mommy just needs 1 minute, mommy needs 5 minutes to finish this thing, and then you can have 100% of mommy's attention.
Yeah.
It's important to do that. and to allow them to go and experience other things. And, I am a really strongly boundaried person, but I work really hard in the times that I get to work really hard. And I'm with my kids 100% in the times that I'm with them 100%.
Was there a moment, were you always like that? Or was there a moment when something changed and you were like, okay,
Yeah.
I need to do this in a different way?
Yes. So Sylvia's like, no, I was not always like that. Everything fell apart first, Jack. So when I became a mom, I think it's important to caveat. I wasn't one of those women that was like, I am going to be a mom and that's going to be like, that's my vocation and that's what I'm going to do. I didn't even know that I was going to have kids. I wasn't sure that I would have them at all. And so when I became a mom, I was already owning this gym business and I didn't resource myself in any capacity to deal with any of the changes that were going to come with becoming a mom or what I was going to do with my business or my husband was going to work 2 jobs. He was going to, he was going to go to work at the fire hall and then he was going to run the gym. And like somewhere along there, I was going to hope he didn't implode. And I was going to be stuck at home while my brick and mortar business was running without me. Like, and that should be fine, right? None of it was fine. It was all terrible. And so for me, when my daughter was about 6 months old, I had to hire a nanny because we lost an employee. So I was really living in this place where like, if my gym, I was like, the gym was going to be successful no matter what.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter how my husband felt. It didn't matter how I felt. It didn't matter. I was just like, I was gym or bust.
Yeah.
It was a horrible prioritization strategy. I do not recommend it. And so I had to hire a nanny at 6 months old and I had to make this decision between, okay, I have to go back now and work in my gym. Which I realize for an American listening is like, well, yeah, 6 months, that's so long. Here in Canada, it's women get a year of maternity leave. So
by the way, it should be that way everywhere, but that's for another discussion. Yeah.
A podcast episode. But this was like really different, right? I'm doing something that's really different than my peers. Like women take a year, 18 months you can have off here. Here I am like going back to work at 6. There's nowhere that really take a baby at 6 months here. Like it's so rare to do that.
Yeah.
And so I had to hire this nanny and I really, for me, was this like eye-opening experience of what I actually needed because it would forced me into this separation from my child that I have had with me for 6 months. Up until that point. And so I was creating this space and I was like, oh, I actually really like this space. And so I was sort of forced into having to look at what this all meant because at first it was like, I'm hiring this nanny. I guess I'm a bad mom. This must be a bad mom. And I was like, no, actually, this makes me a good mom. Because
this makes me happier when I am with my child.
And so that was sort of became the unraveling of it. And, obviously I mentioned a little bit about my first year strategy running my business with my daughter didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, my marriage imploded, everything imploded because it was like, this is a mess. And so in the process of putting it all back together, my husband and I are still together by like going to therapy and really starting to analyze, okay, we need to not do this ever again. That's sort of what the process of really starting to redefine what good motherhood means.
Yeah.
And my own definition of it, free of other people's opinions, really started. So it came from a true falling apart.
Yeah.
Which is a big reason why this Mother Means business and the work that I do matters.
Yeah.
Because I don't want other women
to have to get to that point of, falling apart. What are some of the red signs or the red flags that someone is heading towards that burnout in their business and in their life that you see and you're like happy people get to you before they get to that point?
Yeah, it's like they feel like they're doing everything but nothing.
Yeah.
They're in like what I would call like a functional freeze. They like sit at their computer and they try to do work and it's like, I don't even know what I'm doing right now. Or that feeling of like, I mean, I'm not a therapist, but that feeling of like hopelessness where it's just like, I'm trying to climb up this mountain and I literally, like, I don't even know what to do. I feel like so overwhelmed. And so usually, sometimes when women like that come to me, I say, okay, I'm going to refer you to a therapist as well. And you can fix these pieces of your business. But I think what ends up happening truly, Jack, and you talked a little bit about prioritization. And when I was in that first year, my order of prioritization was my business, my kids, my husband, and then myself.
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of women are, right? They're last. And their sort of top 4 priorities, if they have a partner or not, they're last. Their business and their
Right.
kids come before them. When really the prioritization needs to look a little bit more like you, me, I'm first,
Yeah.
then my partner, then my kids and my business. And
Yeah.
I will be honest, it's not always perfect.
Sure.
Sometimes those 3, the first 3 flip around, but I will be truthful, my business comes last.
Yeah.
It's this to come last.
Yeah.
And so really being able to help women fix that prioritization, and then how do you build a business then that can come last?
Right.
We use strategies to
Yeah.
allow it to come last. That's the work.
Yeah. And I would build on that. First of all, I love that. And somebody told me it's like the airplane analogy where it's like put your own mask on first before
Yeah.
you help the people around you.
Yeah.
And I would build on that and say there are different seasons to when your priorities are allowed to shift,
Yeah.
or even it happens and you don't even realize it's happening, right? And it's okay. And as long as everyone in your family is taken care of and on the same page and understands like where the priorities are, I think it's okay. 'Cause sometimes, like, I'm in a season of really leaning into my business.
Yeah.
My son is 6. I stepped away from like the startup world when I found out I was pregnant and started Honeybees Group and, have been working for the past 6 years, but not at my full capacity. And now in my life in this season, I'm ready to run hard at my business. I know that's not going to be forever,
No.
but for right now, it is. And so, you mentioned like structuring your life in a way that lets that be possible. Because the other thing is, I think as women, as moms, we think you said it before, what makes a good mom? We think we have to do it all ourselves, and you don't. This is like a symptom of social media, a symptom of just people not acknowledging and being real about what their life looks like. We have support and help, and I wouldn't be able to do anything without that. So I love that. And I think it depends on the season you're in and what you're doing. But I love the idea of, prioritizing yourself, which none of us do. And I am certainly going to be looking at how I set boundaries now and just kind of sit on that and explore that. Tell me what is next for this Mother Means business.
Yeah, it's a great question. So this Mother's business right now is really about the event. It's coming up in April here in just north of Toronto, but really about continuing just to figure out how to make sure that our community, the spaces that we have, are truly world class for entrepreneurial moms and are full of the things that they really need to get that real support, and just spreading the word, having more women coming inside and really focusing on spreading our message and letting other mom entrepreneurs know that like there is a safe place for them to come and talk about whatever is coming up in their business, and also to be surrounded by other women who are ambitious. They do. I think a lot of mom entrepreneurship conversations tend to be like very fluffy and very cute and very MLM-y, which we're not here to knock on any of that. You do you, but this is about like women that are really passionate about the work that they're doing and want to show up as devoted mothers, and however that definition is for them. And a lot of the women are like you, right? They're in a season of really wanting to push as they want to make bank. They want to do the things, and they're trying to navigate that intersection. And so it's really, for me, this Mother Means business is really still in its infancy, right? I know I've been doing this work for a long time, but really building this brand is it's early days still. And so I'm excited to continue exposing it and getting more women involved.
I love that. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can learn more about This Mother Means Business at thismothermeansbusiness.com. If you want to connect with me on Instagram, I'm at It's Laura Sinclair. Same on Threads. I love Threads too. I've spent a lot of time on there. But if we made it this far in the podcast, we're officially friends. So make sure you send me say hi.
Wonderful. And one last question. What does making bank mean to you?
Ooh, it's a good question. I should have known that question was coming. For me, so it's so interesting because if you had asked me this maybe like 5 years ago, I would have been like a big fat bank account, Jac. But to me, making bank is as much about impact as it is about having a big fat bank. And so making bank, impacting people, changing lives, and really making a drop in this giant world that we live in.
I love that. Thank you so, so much for joining us. If you guys are not following or getting Laura's emails, make sure to sign up and get information and check your boundaries this week. Let's all do a little boundary inventory and save ourselves from the burnout. Laura, thank you so, so much for joining us. I cannot wait to see you soon inside your community.
Thanks so much for having me, Jac.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Girls Make Bank. If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe, like, and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Please review and share our show to help spread the word and help your girls make bank. And I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram, or visit honeybeesgroup.co. Until next time, friends.